Hey there, in this video we are going to have a look at one of the latest weapons in Battlefield 2042. I think this one is an exciting one and in many ways one of the most unique weapons in the game. This video took a few days longer than anticipated to make, as Battlefield 2042 seems to somewhat relapse into old habits with worse hitreg as of Season 1, at least for me. Apart from being utterly annoying, I'm afraid that it's somewhat tainted my original verdict of the BSV-M. In this video, I'm going to go through the real-life history of the weapon and also what is a DMR. Then we head into the universe of Battlefield 2042 and compare it to real life and figure out what place it feels in the game. Continuing with the setup, and finally I give the verdict for how good or how bad this. As always, you can jump straight to whatever part you find the most interesting using the timeline below. Before we get started, if you find this video useful at all, consider giving a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing to get more content like this. The BSV-M is a modern interpretation of the VSS-Vintorres. Actually, if we want to get all really deep into the weapon nerdiness, it's kind of a mix of the VSS-M Grau 6P29M, the VSK94 and the AS-Val. Lots of letters and numbers, let's see if we can straighten it out a little bit. So, the VSS-Vintorres was developed in the 80s alongside the AS-Val. They were both developed to replace old modified general-purpose firearms for clandestine operations, but while the Val is an automatic rifle, the VSS is a DMR. Given the purpose, some degree of stealth is of course required. Before we go any further, let's take a moment and contemplate what a DMR actually is. DMR stands for Designated Marksman Rifle, which is intended to fill the gap in range between service rifles and dedicated sniper rifles. This typically is somewhere around 300 meters and even up to 600 meters. To make it manageable and practical, it usually also means that ammo capacity, fire rate, recoil control and so on is somewhere between service rifles, for instance assault rifles, and dedicated sniper rifles. They tend to be semi-automatic and have zoom sights for better visibility and handling at longer ranges. The VSS has an effective range of 300 meters and has a fire rate of 800 to 900 RPM. It's typically a semi-automatic and comes with a zoom sight. It has an integral suppressor and typically uses subsonic bullets. The suppressor effectively hides the muzzle flash and reduces the muzzle report to somewhere around 130 decibel. It accepts 10, 20 or even 30 rounds mags shared with AS-Val and SR3M. The weapon has its roots in the old Soviet and, as expected, users are mainly former Soviet countries, Russia and current Russian-friendly countries. As such, it's used by both Russian Special Forces as well as Ukrainian SBU Alpha Group. Moving on to Battlefield 2042, it's a rare fish. Usually, I say the plus system that modifies your weapon can't significantly change the nature of the weapon. It only adjusts it by hiding weaknesses and strengthening the good parts, or marginally adjust it more to your personal liking. When it comes to the BSV, however, this is no longer real true. By using the plus system in combination with firing modes, it can significantly change the nature of the weapon, turning it into a DMR, an assault rifle, or even an SMG. We're not talking about small adjustments towards one or the other direction, we're talking about complete change of behavior. It's like they combined the VSS, the Val and the SR3M into one weapon, distinguishing only by the attachments provided by the plus system. When you get the BSV, it's equipped with high-power subsonics and a 5x zoom sight. High-power subsonic has reduced effective range, but other than that they are decent. The mag only carries 10 though. The recoil isn't too bad, but at least I find it sometimes a bit weird. Like the spread recoil doesn't coincide with the aim sometimes. So let it rest just a tiny bit more than you think and you're all good. I find it more efficient in full auto though, even if I manually sometimes tap the shots. I'd say that with this setup it's mostly an DMR, even if it becomes even more so with extended barrel. But when you unlock close combat rounds and short barrel, the fire rate becomes insane. Need a lot of bullets to kill though, but essentially you got an SMG. Fitted with sight for close combat or even laser sight for hipfire, it's a completely different weapon. With extended mag and BCG light grip, it's pretty much an assault rifle. Battlefield 2042 behaves a little bit different compared to some previous Battlefield titles. As you can see, there is some recoil with the BSV, but not a whole lot of it. But more importantly, there is some spread even when using the semi-automatic mode. In, for instance, Battlefield 5, there was no spread at all when using semi-automatic mode. Apart from struggling with hit registration, I also found this a bit weird for a while, as I just assumed that there would be no spread when using semi-automatic mode. According to some streamers, you can always kill your target with either 3 hits or even 2 if one is a headshot. I'm not fully convinced about this, or maybe they didn't count for armor, but at most 1 more hit is required. So keep this in mind and stay calm, and you will be much more efficient using the BSV. For starters, it felt natural to use the default barrel, as I prefer to keep some distance to the enemy, and I thought that with DMR the extended barrel would make sense quite often. But the more I play this weapon, the more I like to have the short barrel to increase the fire rate, even at longer ranges. All barrels are suppressed, so the main difference is the fire rate and the bullet velocity. The funny thing though is that even with short barrel, I don't really suffer from slow bullet velocity. I haven't seen any numbers for this weapon, but it can't be that bad. This is one of those moments where everything works, but I think the best option is to run with a short barrel always, except maybe when trying to snipe at a few hundred meters, where normal or extended may make more sense. For a very long time I used the PSO-1M free sight, which is a bit odd for me. Normally I don't like so much zoom when firing at this rate, but for some reason it works even at closer ranges. I also use the 8R hollow, which I only use when setting it up as an SMG. Sights are always very personal, so try to find what works for you with this weapon. After trying almost every sight, I know I don't like some since before, and after some time with the BSV I know that some sights aren't for me, on this weapon at least. But after a lot of fiddling back and forth, I actually landed in the TV2 time sight, which gives a little bit less zoom and it works at most ranges still. And the little recoil becomes pretty much non-existent with this sight. The main difference between high power rounds and subsonic high power is the effective range, if the description is to be believed. I thought I would notice a bigger change between these, but much like they are shared the same audio for whatever weird reason, they seem to very much share similar damage output. I guess the map kind of limits the distance quite a lot, at least how I play it, which might cause me to often be within the effective range of both. I usually run non-subsonic, but keep the subsonic as an option. I also bring the close combat for SMG setup, but only if there are ammo boxes in close proximity. Finally, I use the BCG light grip. I like using ads and it gives a very consistent experience. Laser sight could be used with SMG setup, but other than that I can't really recommend any grips. It's of course depending on your playstyle. So what do I think about the weapon in Battlefield 2042? It's a fun new weapon, and it feels nothing like the previous weapons. It suits exposure well, and it generally is a really nice weapon on other maps as well. Some say it's overpowered, but I don't know. It's pretty much good at all scenarios, but in each and every scenario there are always better options. It's mainly restricted by the lack of ammo, both in the mag, at least until you get the extended, but also by how much you can carry in total. Bringing ammo boxes is always a valid option with this weapon, or you will have to loot the targets a lot, which can put you in awkward situations. It's a fun weapon, and there will always be some balancing to do, but I don't think it's really overpowered. If I bring, for instance, the M5A3 with the setup I suggested in my video about that one, I can have a longer streaks, although the BSV can reach for more distance. On the other hand, I can use a real sniper rifle for that, which can kill in one shot. I have never really liked rifles for longer distances that require more than one hit, but I know a lot of players feel different. When you get it, I think you should give it a chance and make sure to tap that full auto mode before running into enemies. Cheers!